All right, good morning. Welcome to our webinar, first in the series of our workshop series for building principles as school counselors. Today's topic is developing in school counseling regulations 101. As the slide says, we're recording this, so if you need to look back at it at another time, you'll be receiving a link right after this. We're going to recognize everybody's time in the beginning of the school day and get started right away. I'd like to introduce our presenter, Dr. Carol Day here. She's former chair of the School Counseling Department at NYIT, currently teaches at NYU and NYIT. She's been working with state ed departments, urban districts, suburban districts, small districts, school counseling associations all over the country, and national organizations on school counseling program, college and career awareness, principal counselor relationships, which is our topic, and many other things. She was part of the team that developed the new regulations that went into effect in 2019-2020, and has worked on the implementation process throughout New York City and New York State. We're really looking forward to this presentation and to this series, and I think it's going to have a lot of value for school counseling in New York State. So without further ado, good morning, Carol.
Good morning, Dr. Rotunda and all my friends out there. It's been great just to be able to see how many of you are here today. But I don't want to waste any of our time. And I love this pink glow from the lamp above me, so it feels kind of odd. One of these days I'll learn how to do the right kind of lighting. Bob, you can see my screen, thumbs up? Okay, perfect. So folks, just a couple of quick housekeeping details. Please try and keep your audio on mute. Questions put in chat. Dr. Bob Rotunda, our Executive Director of ASCA, will monitor them. As you may remember from the flyer, we're going to run a tight 45 minutes, especially because our principals and our counselors are carving out time from their crazy, hectic, busy school day. But we still thought it was better to try and have this during the day when a school principal, a school leader, and a counselor can share this session together. So we're going to have the Q&A after the session. It's scheduled for 15 minutes. We'll run over if need be. Don't worry about that to get to all of your questions. As Bob mentioned, this is being recorded. You will receive a bunch of handouts and also the PowerPoint via email, and probably some of it in a bundle before you leave today. And at the end, we're going to give you a quick exit survey so we can plan a little bit tighter for next week and figure out where people are in the process, and also to look ahead for the following school year. So welcome, everybody. I know this is an exciting time, but a crazy time. Let me just see if I can get my slides to move a little bit better. Here we go. Okay, so let me keep going. The reason I mentioned it's a busy time, it's a crazy time, because no sooner did the regulations go into effect in the fall of 2019 than in the winter of 2020 we were faced with COVID. So we know it's been a roller coaster. So many of us with the best of intentions have started shifting our programs. Many of us had many of these components in place. But right now, we're just going to take the next 45 minutes and do a quick update of the basic components of what NYSET expects. And then we will go into a little bit more of a deeper dive in some of the components in the rest of the sections. And so the bottom line is that school principals, and I know there's many of you out there, and we already are over 300 folks this morning, as well as our school counselors, need to talk this through. Not that you need to wave a magic wand and change everything immediately, but we need to figure out together, what will a comprehensive program look like in my building, which will be different in everybody's building. Again, some of you have elements in place and some of us are just starting to figure out what's next. but your program will reflect the needs of your building. Yes, NICET is asking us to do 5 basic things. We're going to go over that. But the bottom line is, what do we need to create in our building? So today, a quick review, the NICET regs. We'll go over the basic components of the 2019 version of the ASCA model. Some of you have been through the 2003, the 2005, the 2012, and now we have the 2019, which also came out the same year as our regs. We'll take a quick look at the new standards, the mindsets and behaviors, which are basically, I'm going to be honest with you, a remix of what we started with way back in 1997, but more contemporary. And then last but not least, we'll go over a few tools to get you started. So from the timeline, those of you that have been around more than a few years probably remember the last time we had regulations, 1978. Most of us in this room got our certification and went to our grad programs under the old regs. Finally, in 2013, and it took 4 years of state ed working collaboratively with NISCA and approximately 200 councils across the state, our new regulations went into effect. New York City started in 2020 because many of you know about 50% of our students and 50% of our school counselors are part of the New York City DOE. So recognizing that, the state gave New York City a little more time to get things organized. When you receive the slides, you'll see at the bottom of each slide where you can find the resources. So for example, when you click on the link on the bottom, you'll see the regulations. I don't know why, but my screen does not want to move. Dr. Rotunda, just give me 1 second. There we go. Okay. So basically, the amended regulations, they're not actually new. They're an extension of what we had. Nationally recognized good practice, very much based in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Aligned with your school's mission, your district mission, your building CEP, Comprehensive Education Plan, or School Improvement Plan. And then based on the knowledge and skills that you feel is critical for the students in your building. So what do these look like? Well, there are, again, key components that went into effect basically 2 years ago. The first and probably the most important for all of us is every student has access to a certified school counselor. It doesn't mean, and we'll get a little bit more into that, that every building has to hire a brand new school counselor. But districts across the state are working very carefully to have more counselors so that their K-5 students also now have access to a certified school counselor. Every school counselor develops and implements a comprehensive school counseling program. Again, it's going to look different from building to building. The comprehensive school counseling program is aligned to the ASCA model, and then the program is available to all, not just the kids with high needs and not just our kids who have family members with high needs, but every student will benefit from the program. So here are basically, try to summarize for you the 5 key components. And these would be, I'd say, put this up on your wall. These are the goals for us to work towards as we begin to shift our programs. Again, a comprehensive program will look different. Access to a certified school counselor. The IPR, the individual progress review for grades 6 through 12, way back in the old days, pre-2019, we called it the annual review. And in New York City, it was the guidance review card, and that was for grades 7 through 12. A core curriculum, now K-12, which is fabulous, that we begin to develop our students' knowledge and skills at an early age, and then more direct services to our students and indirect. So more contact with students, more tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 activities, and hopefully less indirect activities, which we'll get into in a minute. The 3 domains remain: academic development, again, to help motivate our students, help them maximize their ability to learn. Social emotional development, as you know, is very important across our state and across our nation. And again, many of us have SEL programs that we've had in place for years. And now we're not just calling it career development, we're calling it college and career development, so that we are now guiding our students to understand the connection between their future dreams and the education that they need to get there. When we say college, we're really talking about post-secondary opportunities, meaning that 4-year college, 2-year college is not for every student. But knowing that most of our kids will need more than a high school diploma, but less than a 4-year college degree to succeed. So utilizing multi-tiered systems of support. What this model is doing, as we unpack it a little bit more in our regulations, is providing more tier 1 activities for our students. Now, the challenge, of course, school counselors is going to be time. And for our principals in the room, the challenge is going to be, how do we give our counselors access to students in a meaningful way without taking away instructional time from teachers? So tier 1, think of our school counseling curriculum. And tier 1, think about the IPR for grades 6 through 12, because all students benefit from that. The tier 2 is basically group counseling and specialized activities for some groups of students. Maybe some specialized in-school programs that you are running for select group of students. Tier 3 has not changed. Tier 3 has always been our mandated counseling, our individual counseling for non-mandated students, and of course, collaboration with our mental health colleagues in our buildings. So collaboration, referrals to social workers in our buildings, to school psychologists, to maybe a CBO that's connected with our school, or local community organizations.
Carol?
Yes, Bob.
We have some folks reporting that there's some static on the audio. I'm not sure where it's coming from.
I'm not sure either. Let me check my audio settings. Okay, I'll drop it a little bit and speak a little louder.
If everybody else could just mute themselves and just Carol be unmuted, I think that would help with the static. Good morning, Carol. How you doing?
Good morning. Thank you. That usually works, but I just reduced my audio also, and I'll speak a little louder. Sometimes that might create static. Thank you. So yes, folks, if you can, I know many of you, you're all in your schools, and so it's hard to mute. Let me get into this this regulation or this part of the regulation. Again, the source is at the bottom of the slide. This is a little tricky. What does it mean that all kids must have access? Well, first of all, let's go back up. There we go. Sorry. Here we go. First of all, NYSEG did not provide additional funding. And funding for a counselor, as many of our administrators in the room today know, is expensive. And so that for many of our districts is a phase-in. This regulation refers to a certified school counselor. So the regulations are for school counselors, not for our certified social workers and psychologists. So one certification cannot be substituted for another. So ultimately, the goal is that every school building will have a certified school counselor. Now, some of you at the elementary level may be a ratio of 1 to 900 kids in your building, and that's very difficult. So again, looking at how over time our districts can reduce that and be able to have a certified school counselor accessible for Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And remember, our Tier 1 activities are our prevention activities, while our Tier 3 may be intervention. So thinking ahead, how can we make this happen over the next couple of years? And then the idea is to increase collaboration among our counselors, psychologists, and social workers to ensure that all students are benefiting, so that some of these activities are collaborative. Group counseling is collaborative. Many of our Tier 1 classroom lessons are collaborative also. And so it's not only the school counselor that can deliver some of these. Now, access also means that the counselor must be involved in designing this program. And at the 6 through 12 level, it is the school counselor, and I'll emphasize that, the school counselor who delivers the individual progress review. So again, it's not a requirement that every building must hire a school counselor, kind of an oxymoron, but that every student must have access. So it's a little tricky to figure out. We've seen over the last 2 years, many of our districts adding more counselors at the elementary level. Now, this IPR that many of you have had challenges with, especially because of COVID. In 2020, your students were remote. And in last year, in 2021, many of our students were in and out, depending upon what was going on in our buildings. So the reality is, getting our students individually for the IPR is a little tricky. But again, it's a time for our students to have some private time with their counselor each year to do an update on their academic progress, their college and career readiness, their plans, and their SEL development. That 10 or 15-minute meeting, and I'm just using that as a guide, does not replace mandated counseling. It doesn't replace the other sessions. But many of us are looking at ways of getting access to our students, and in the times that we need to reach them, looking at key times, maybe 6th graders at the beginning of the school year when they're first coming in and adjusting, maybe 9th graders also at the beginning of the school year, perhaps our 12th graders in the fall when they're doing their college applications or their post-secondary applications, but finding the time to be able to schedule all of our kids over the course of the full year is tricky, and especially with the ups and downs of COVID. And now we have our curriculum. And again, the lessons are intended to reflect the needs of your building. So the lessons that are delivered in one person's 2nd grade will look different than lessons in somebody else's 2nd grade. And then, of course, what we focus in on for our 8th graders, our 9th graders, our 7th graders, our 5th graders are going to be different from building to building. But the idea is to make a plan. What are the skills and the knowledge we want our kids to acquire as they progress through elementary, into middle, and through high school? So district directors, this is the perfect time to begin to build that scope and sequence of goals for each grade level. Now, the curriculum is delivered in collaboration with school staff. school teachers, psychologists, social workers. Many of our buildings are using different SEL programs, and those programs are being delivered by our classroom teachers, along with our school psychologists, our school counselors, and our school social workers. Now let's go into the idea of direct services. Again, anytime, folks, you might remember from internship days last year or many moons ago, those of you who are certified counselors, direct will always our work with students. I'm working with my kids in the same room. Individual planning, responsive services, counseling, regular counseling, general counseling, IEP counseling. Indirect, all of the meetings, all of the school teams, our referrals, consultation with teachers, those become our indirect services. Many states across the country are using it 80%, as does ASCA, 80% direct services, 20% indirect, to provide a fully comprehensive program. So what does this look like? We have 5 clear NYSED expectations. Again, access, the individual progress review, the curriculum, more direct services than indirect services, and again, over the 3 tiers. We have school and district plans that reflect the needs of your students specifically, and then now we have these regulatory changes. So let me bring you over to the ASCA model for a moment. Now, when NYSED put these together, it was based on the 2014, but NYSED, of course, is moving with the times. So in New York, we'll share with you the 2019, not dramatically different. Again, we have 4 areas. The define, which is our standards. Again, we'll do more of that in some of the subsequent sessions. We'll talk about how we deliver our program, that's the direct and the indirect, how we manage our program, getting organized, knowing how it operates, our calendars, our collaborations with our teams, our departments, and our high schools. And then we assess, how do we know that our program is making a difference? Here's the bottom line, folks. NYSED is not asking us to implement the entire ASCA model or to go ramp the recognized ASCA model program. NYSED is asking us to use some of these good practices. So for example, aligning your program with the standards. Just like all of our colleagues, our teachers, all of their curriculum and their programs are standards-based. Our programs also are standards-based. So we have learning strategies, we have self-management skills, we have social skills. The idea is delivering an activity with intention and purpose. So using our standards in a way that makes sense and that we can identify over the course of a student's K through 12 career in our suburban districts and our smaller urban systems and in our rural districts, that we can start building K through 12 programs based on our standards. So as we look at our curriculum, we'll interject these standards as best as we can. In our group counseling, we'll utilize them. And then in, of course, our individual counseling, we know which standards we want to align with the goals that we have for our students. So getting started, I think first and foremost, folks, look at your school vision and your school mission statement, and then build your school counseling mission statement and vision statement around that. But start off first with the goal, your vision and the mission, and again, your school improvement plan for your building. And then look at your vision and then build your vision and mission. And then we're going to show you quickly a program mapping tool. NICET has one in the regs. We've unpacked it a little bit more so that as you're building your program, you can also look at what are the outcomes that we want to have for our students. So implications for our districts are a little tricky. You need administrators and counselors and district level administrators to figure out, what does access mean? If we don't have in our budget enough money to put an elementary counselor in each building, how do our students get access to a counselor? How can we figure that out? And hopefully over time, our districts will be able to begin to infuse at least one counselor in every building. And elementary folks, we know that can be a hardship because, again, we know some of our elementary buildings are not 300 students. Some of our buildings are 800 and 900 students. Developing a district-wide plan so that at the elementary level, it flows neatly into the middle level, into the high school level. Not all of our districts have supervisors of school counseling or student support services. So thinking developmentally so that your plan goes smoothly. So my fifth graders transition nicely and neatly into sixth grade. My eighth graders transition into high school. And therefore the skills that we start at the elementary level, again, move to middle. And then high school counselors, you're going to have it easy because by the time our kids get to the high school, all of those mindset and behavior skills, they've got them already, and we're just refining them, and I'm sure you're laughing. And then, of course, an advisory council. Many of us have had advisory councils for years. When I worked in Sewantica, my friends in Sewantica remember this, we had our advisory meetings at 7:30 in the morning before school, and that included key folks from our building in our district and our PTA, and at the high school we invited some students. So again, putting some of these key regulatory practices in place, but to be honest with you, having worked with all of them, both as a practitioner, I worked as a school counselor, I worked as a district supervisor in 5 districts. I couldn't keep a job, only kidding, building administrators, but being able to have opportunities to work with elementary counselors was one of my motivations. And then I went over to higher ed, but I've worked with all of these levels and I continue to work with counselors at these levels. They are doable, but it's all about careful and concise planning and collaborating principal and counselor together to make these pieces happen. So the plans. Each district develops a plan, okay? Not just pieces of the plan. With the support and the help and the direction of the counselor, update them annually because our kids change, our needs change. We're still exiting from COVID. We hope we're exiting. And so many of the things we wanted to do over the last 2 years have been difficult. Your plan is supposed to be public. Now you can Google school counseling plans and find many of them across the state, but many of us have not publicly put them up yet. But at least at the district website, at the school district website, many of them are available. But that's helpful then to see what your colleagues are doing. I know on Long Island, there is a directors network. So sharing and exchanging is a great idea because, especially coming out of COVID, how certain activities like even scheduling and IPR, how they work well for some folks, and some of these tips may be helpful to other counselors. Our plan should include objectives and activities. New York City put out goals. So we have 12 goals, a goal for each grade level in our New York City comprehensive plans. developing your plan, looking at building a curriculum. Many of us don't have a curriculum yet. Hopefully at the end of this, Dr. Rotunda, if we have a minute, we'll share with them the 312 lessons that NISCA just put up. But we have a whole repository of lessons for counselors and their colleagues to pick and choose to help them get started. Addressing professional development, our teachers need to know what a comprehensive plan is and why collaborating with their school counselor will be helpful, especially for some of the skills that we know our students need to develop, whether they're skills around SEL or whether they're skills around academic motivation. We need to look at how do we know our program is making a difference? Is it effective? We don't do activities just for the sake of doing them or because we counselors like them. We do them because they have meaning and impact for our students to be more successful in school. And then, of course, we want to make sure that the resources that we have are in place. We don't have to go out and spend money for curriculum. We don't have to go out and spend thousands of dollars on different tools. Again, NISC has put together some of the folks in this webinar. We're actually part of the NISCA team, part of the New York City team. So we had counselors from all over the state refining and selecting lessons. And they've all been vetted by certified school counselors. Now it's a matter of using them and make them meaningful for you. So we thought this was the perfect time to introduce all of this as you start planning your programs for next year. So what do we need to do together? Principals, school administrators, assistant principals, deans, our teachers, and our school staff. What role do we all play? Well, we know that counselors do not play a big role in our math programs, but counselors collaborate with the math department to have a better sense of where students are doing well and where they're not doing well. Counselors may collaborate with our reading programs, meaning at our elementary level, we often work with some of the books that are being used for reading programs, language arts programs at the elementary level, and we can extend some of those learnings about getting along with others and being respectful. We can extend that from the language arts program to the counseling program. So there are ways of collaborating by utilizing curriculum resources and talking with our teachers. We also will need access to kids as school counselors to be able to deliver the individual progress review and collaborate with teachers to deliver curriculum programs. Many of our teachers are delivering health programs to our students, drug and alcohol programs in our middle schools and our high schools. We're also delivering SEL programs, which many of our schools have in place. So we want to get together, teachers, counselors, administrators, figure out what do you have in place already? How do we make that work? And then collaborating with our school psychologists and our school social workers to look at the needs of group counseling, as well as mandated counseling for our special education students, as well as the needs for some of our students with special needs, excuse me, our English language learners, to make sure all of our students are getting the skills that they need from all of us. But the counseling program can then, in essence, map all of this out. Excuse me. So let me talk to you just for a minute about program mapping. NYSET put a tool in place, and we're going to share one with you. I'll just share a screenshot with you. And then it's going to be one of the tools that we're going to bundle and make sure you get. Dr. Rotunda, are you thinking of sending that out tomorrow? Thumbs up. But the mapping tool, yes.
Today or tomorrow, yep.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So the mapping tool is basically a deep dive into everything we're doing. And there may be SEL lessons that are being delivered by our classroom teachers. There may be, if your school has a college counselor, there may be some classroom programs that our college counselors delivered. All of that will be put on the map. And then, of course, the activities, the group work, the individual work, our tier 1, our tier 2, our tier 3 activities. Mapping helps us align with standards, which is really, really important. So we too have a standards-based program like all of the educators across our state. This is what a program map looks like. Now we're calling it Sample School Counseling / Guidance Program Map. Some of you may say, why are you using guidance program? Because remember, guidance is delivered by all of the professionals in our building. By regulation, only school counselors, school social workers, and school psychologists are permitted by regulation to counsel in the formal sense. But guidance activities are part of everybody's responsibility. So we have many of our teachers providing guidance activities through SEL curriculum, and we have other professionals in the building delivering other activities that are not from, I don't mean part, but they are not certified school counselors, but still delivering programs that would be part of this. So let me just show you this quickly. Here's where we write our activity, and you're going to receive an Excel spreadsheet, which is very easy to negotiate and navigate, and the boxes grow with you, and it's easy enough to update every year once you get this started. So program activity, here's where we drop in our standards. This is a sample that's being used by the New York City Department of Ed. The one that you receive is for the state. It's a generic one. Our self-management skills and our social skills, again, from the ASCA mindsets and behaviors. The grade level. Many of us feel the best way to organize a map is to do a tab, an Excel tab for each grade level, or to build it by grade level so that you get a full picture of everything going on with your 4th graders or your 9th graders or your 6th graders. The tier, the domain. Is it academic? Is it college and career? Is it SEL? That helps us identify if we're in balance. Sometimes we see that the majority of our activities at the elementary level might be tipped heavily in social emotional development, while maybe many of our high school activities are tipped in the area of college and career or academic. So what we want to do by looking at this, the activity, the standard, and then the domain, is to make sure that by the time the student progresses from K through 12, that we've balanced our program. It may not be balanced every grade level, because we know some grades need more than others, but at least to be balanced by the time our students exit our high schools. And then tier 1, 2, and 3. Remember, again, you'll have this PowerPoint. Tier 1, all students. Tier 2, some group. Tier 3, individual. And honestly, counselors, we've been using what was PBIS and RTI, now MTSS. It's an alphabet soup. It's sort of a marriage of both. But we've always done classroom work, individual work, and group 1. And group 2, group counseling. So using these 3 tiers has been something we've always done, even way back under the old regulations. And then direct or indirect, that helps you monitor. whether the majority of your activities are direct. Now, this got cut off a little bit, the timeline, but you want to make a note of when it happens so you can see how to balance. That can come directly from the calendar that you are utilizing to organize your program for the year. And then who's involved? So it might be teachers and a social worker for a particular classroom activity. It might be the counselor only, and maybe family members, and of course, students in every category. And then your outcome. How do I know that this group experience for my 5 wiggly 7th grade boys, how do I know that their focus and their attention is getting better? Well, I'm going to create an outcome based on teacher feedback, based on maybe grade improvement that I will be able to see at the end of my group, that because of this group meeting once a week for the last 6 to 8 weeks, that my students have better focus, better attention, and my teachers are reporting that their grades are improving. And that becomes our measurable outcome. We want to know that what we are doing has impact. In your PowerPoint is also a sample. Again, I borrowed from the DOE because all 3,300 counselors in all of our buildings through PD over the last 2 years, Focus PD, that was organized by Dr. Slimani Perez-Sadler, who could not be with us today. But we have had tons of workshops to introduce this. So this is a sample of what the counselors in New York City are doing, and easy enough for all of you across the state to use or utilize the map that's in the NYSED regulations. So when you see that, click on the bottom for that link. You click on that link, you'll be able to go to the last page of the guidance to the regulations document, and it shows the state map a little less detailed than this one. So a few tips, because I know we're close to the time. Principals, we promised you 45 minutes a classroom period, and counselors to keep it tight, and then I will stay on for questions with Dr. Rotunda. So team approach. To get started, get a group of folks together. This is the perfect time. We're going into the home stretch. Good time to plan for next year. Don't forget, in the city, bring your parent coordinator in. Suburbs, bring in one of your local CBOs, one of your local agencies in our rural areas to help you do the planning. Collaborate with your teachers. Find out what the needs of the kids are. Building administrators, share your school improvement goal so that this program is well connected, that it's cyclical from school improvement goals to classroom needs to student needs. And the counselors can then begin to develop those objectives and select the standards that make the most sense. No one is saying 36 ASCA standards. Maybe you'll use 5 next year. And again, that may not be what ASCA would like us to do, our national association, but comprehensive school counseling, building a good program is a process, and we need to take the time to do this well. Be flexible. We're gonna try things. We may not always succeed, but like every new idea, we'll go slowly and we'll make it better over time. And don't reinvent the wheel, which is why we have 312 lessons. I keep saying our commercial for NISC's lesson repository. Just adapt those lessons or adopt them. Borrow practices from other people. There's tons going on out there. There's more ideas that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Let me just I have to remind myself when we all get frustrated that things aren't going as well. Every one of us has had, not just the kids, but every one of us has had trauma from COVID. We're recovering, which is going to take us a long time, but so have our kids. If it was from fear, from family members getting ill, from losing family members, from losing a teacher in their buildings, that we have to recognize this. Our counseling plans need to include these tier 1 universal interventions. We need to help our students and our families cope. We still need to focus on our resiliency and overcoming adversity. And we know many of our students, many of our underserved and underrepresented students have had more than their fair share of even just being able to attend school the last 2 years. Maybe their technology supports were not in place for a while. We're still, excuse me, we're still in recovery, and it is a long-term recovery. So again, at the end, the 5 key components: deliver a comprehensive program, access as best we can. I know many of our schools, again, are attempting to add a counselor each year. The IPR, I know we're doing the best we can, but it is helpful to connect with our kids individually for a few minutes every year in an individual conference. The curriculum, and then the direct services. Those are the 5 key pieces. So we're going to, Dr. Rotunda put in chat this quick little exit survey. I think it's 5 questions, folks. This will help us plan. It'll help me plan for next week in case we need to do a deeper dive before I completely build next week's session, which again will be 45 minutes. But if you can click on the link that's in chat, it will take you all of a minute. And then just provide us a little bit of feedback for not just next week's session, but for NISCA to look ahead for what we need to do to help for next year. Again, this is a process. Next week, we're going to look more at how these regulations impact the school community and collaborating and teaming, counselor-principal collaboration, and how that spills over into the building and how that impacts our families, our students, and hopefully our community. We'll talk a little bit more on the outcomes and measurable outcomes, and then taking ownership of your program, our last session in a couple of weeks, and building it going forward. So I'm going to stop there, Dr. Rotunda. Thank you, everybody, from me to all of you for joining us this morning. I know I talk fast. I'm from Brooklyn. I can do it. I'll catch my breath, and then Bob, I'll stop this screen, and then we'll jump into our Q&A. Also, folks, we have a lot of resources for you, and we'll make sure that you get all of those resources, as well as the PowerPoint and a bunch of handouts. Whoops, let me just close this and stop my share. Okay, whoops, I think we did it.
I think we did. Thanks, Carol. We got a couple of questions in the chat as the morning went on, as the hour went on. First one was, good morning, elementary principal from Newfield, New York, Lane Gillette. I am looking for some guidance on how to better utilize our elementary counselor. That's a good one.
Great question. And I would start first by, if you can, before the end of the school year, set up some team meetings or grade level meetings rather, so that your counselor, and these may be happening also, and start looking at student needs, and especially at the elementary level. We'll know that your kindergartners will be first graders next year, but by meeting with the kindergarten teachers to start identifying what needs might progress moving into first grade, I would consider, if you can, setting maybe a goal together for the building, a building goal for your program, but also maybe a goal for each grade level. So what would be the goal for our first graders next year, our second graders, our third graders, and so on, and build a goal for each grade level with the teachers. And then maybe, if you can, why not see if you can pull together an internal committee of counselor, teacher, and yourself when you can free yourself up and start looking at what should be in our program. So what kinds of lessons do we want to focus in on? SEL, maybe some college and career fun things for our students, and maybe some academic motivation or study skills that we can collaborate on together. Hope that helps a little bit. And as we go through these, we'll be sharing more strategies.
Here's a good question. Is there a form for the IPR or examples on what the form should look like?
In New York City, we did build one. Dr. Rotunda, I think we're doing IPR next week, and I can certainly share those forms. So if you can jump on next week, or I'm going to say cheat a little bit, register for next week. Even if you can't make the whole session, you'll get everything. And I will make sure that we had a couple of templates for the rest of the state. And then in New York City, they are completing the IPR in something called the Post-Secondary STARS Tracker. That's a fancy name. But we can, and yes, I see here people are using Naviance. Yes, Naviance has a form. We have a generic form that Bob and I will share with you next week. And then New York City is using the STARS Tracker to complete their IPRs. So we'll have 3 different things to share with you next week.
Yeah, I've got some examples from other districts too.
Oh, great. We'll talk before and we'll put them together.
Yeah. Let's see. Is there a set number of times per year or per grade counselors are expected to deliver classroom curriculum?
Oh, I love that question.
Yeah,
No. And I'm going to be honest with you. Thank goodness. Nice that didn't mandate that. So, and I'm just going to talk about my own experience. And counselors, you've got to adjust this with your principals. Think about, can you get into a classroom once a day? Now, I say that because that means you could technically deliver 5 lessons a week, not 5 different lessons, but if I'm a 7th grade counselor and I can scroll or protect 1 period a day, then I might be able to cover my whole 6th grade in 1 week. So I would try to the best of your ability to try and organize maybe 1 dedicated period a day if you can, or maybe every other week to block out 1 period a week, and then work on what the needs are. So again, in my middle school, I used to love doing a lot of career awareness with the kids, especially getting them ready for high school, and a lot of academic motivation on getting better organized and better study skills, working collaboratively with my teachers, and last but not least, the SEL, because we know how prolific bullying can be, as mean girls and mean boys and mean kids in general across our elementary schools, especially with social media. So I think you can mix it up, but I would look to see, identify if you can, maybe 5 or 6 SEL during the year, maybe 5 or 6 CCR, college and career, maybe 5 or 6 elementary lessons. But if you're doing 15 lessons, let's do the math, per grade level, you've got to sit down and really look at your calendar and figure out, how do I do that? Now, I'm going to put something out there, mandated counseling. Mandated counseling takes up a huge amount of time for those of you that have 50 or 60 mandated cases. You need help. And I'm going to say this, principals, mandated counseling can be shared by our school psychologists and our school social workers. And curriculum can be shared by our school social workers, our school psychologists, and our teachers. So please collaborate on both of these, mandated counseling and our curriculum. But by getting a team together to plan your program, it will be a lot better to determine how to make all of this work. So you need time now, folks, between now and the end of the school year to do some good planning. And that was a long-winded way of getting people together, figure out the needs, figure out how to build this, and make your calendar now for next year to see what you can do and what you can't do.
So this is a follow-up question to the curriculum. Let's see. The mandate says core curriculum is delivered by certified school counselor. And she said it impacts each district differently. And then she says, I don't see counselor delivery language consistently used in the regs. So I'd like further clarity on what core curriculum is.
Great question. So I sat with a colleague from New York City, Suhani Prasad, and I unpacked this like 15 times. It's a little contradictory. It's, in essence, it says the counselor needs to be the designer or a key designer of the curriculum. But then it goes on to say that the curriculum can be delivered in collaboration with teachers. It mentions those teaching college and career readiness, our career and tech teachers. It mentions health teachers in the regs. And in many of our buildings, we have elementary teachers delivering second step. We have elementary teachers delivering harmony. We have elementary teachers delivering overcoming obstacles. So I'm giving you my opinion. And again, Dr. Rotunda and I, maybe it's some year we can get a clarification, but the counselor does not have to deliver the entire curriculum. But the counselor needs to know what's going on. The counselor should, I'm emphasizing this, should coordinate the efforts so that somebody in the building, meaning the school counselor and the building administrator, know what's being delivered and know who is delivering it. But again, this is a coordinated effort. Once you get a team of people together, look carefully at the curriculum. And again, I'm going to suggest school counselors, school psychologists, and school social workers may all deliver mandated counseling, both group and individual, so that if a school counselor has 60 mandated cases, there's very little time to deliver any other prevention or intervention activity. So this is a great time of year to start carefully looking about how we can do a better job of collaborating and teaming for the next school year.
Okay.
But the regs are a little confusing.
One more. This is a great question. I'm in a rural school district. I have a limited number where we have a limited number of school counselors, and we find that we're stretched extremely thin. Kind of relates to the last question. We're often tasked with non-school counseling related responsibilities and find it difficult to implement all of the required tasks, such as classroom lessons. Mm-hmm.
That is a great question. And that's why we planned this series of workshops for principals and then decided to invite the school counselors. But we knew you needed to be here together. So here's the challenge. When principals, I urge you to talk with your counselors. When principals and counselors can show the value of these activities and how they impact student achievement, positively impact attendance, positively improve behavior, then many of these non-counseling duties can go by the wayside. I mean, let's face it, I can do a lot more working with kids, de-stressing them and getting them ready for the state test, which was today, which we didn't realize the math test when we scheduled this, than my counselor proctoring a math test. My work is much better in helping kids stay calm and getting organized for that test. than proctoring. So we have to look at these things. Some of these responsibilities are what we call fair share duties. So as a school counselor, honestly, I had to go into the lunchroom, as did every teacher as part of my union. But in New York City, those are not school counselor responsibilities. So that's a negotiation. Counselor and administrator, show your administrators the outcome of your work and how this is going to make a difference in student achievement, improve student behavior, and also improve attendance. And attendance is money. And right now we have many kids who are still on a roller coaster of coming back to school. So I hope that helps, but it is negotiation. Get your comprehensive program in place, build it collaboratively with your principals and with your colleagues, your teachers, and do the best you can. You can only do the best you can.
I think we're out of time.
Okay, is there any other burning question there, Dr. Rotunda?
I just see one is, where can I find information? And we looked this up last week. Where can I find information on mandated counseling that shows that can be done by school psychs and school social workers? And, really depends on where you work. Where I worked, the school counselors never did mandated counseling. It was always done by the school counselors and social workers. I don't think there's any written document that says that they can do it. Is that your recollection, Carol?
Yes, I was a supervisor in 5 districts on Long Island, and as the district director, we shared the cases. So if I had 150 cases of mandated counseling in my middle school, among the counselors, the psychologist, and the social worker, we divvied them up, and it became much more manageable. We also looked at group intervention versus individual intervention. We looked at reviewing this every year so that for some kids, once they're in individual mandated counseling, it doesn't continue forever. So there's a lot that I believe, I believe there may be something in the Part 200s. But Bob, I know we found something that didn't say it had to be only a school counselor, but Dr. Rotunda and I will take another look. So where can you get school counselor curriculum? Go to nisca.org/curriculum. We'll put that in chat, Bob, if you can put that link.
Yeah, in one of the participants put a site in the chat that says IDEA lists all 3 as providers for related service counseling. Counseling services means services provided by qualified social workers, psychologists, guidance counselors, or every qualified personnel. So that's where it's in IDEA, the quote.
Thank you. Bob, can you send me that link, or I'll get it from you when we shut down?
It's not a link, it's just a site. It's
Okay.
Maisie put it in. Thank you, Maisie.
Thank you, Maisie. And also, everybody was invited to this, including our chapter leader from the UFT. So, and Rosemary has attended, as you know, she's a past NISCA president and has attended many of these workshops. And to answer, yes, our certification is school counselor. And so you folks, counselors and principals, need to lobby to use the word school counselor in your districts. But remember, it has been since 1978 that these regulations haven't changed. And boy, many of us grew up. My generation grew up using the word guidance, so we've got to change it. New York City, it's the city council that created a position of guidance counselor in the 60s. You have to lobby your city council to change that name. So yes, legally in New York City, it hasn't changed, but the rest of the state, there's nothing holding you back from using the word school counselor. Dr. Rotunda, any take on that?
Not really. It's just, I mean, I hear it all the time from my grandkids to the counselors up the street here, and it's changing slowly. And I hear it around the country as well. But in terms of the legal issue in New York City, I know that UFT has changed their website. It says school counselor now. and a lot of the language is changing, but it's like turning the Titanic around.
Slowly.
All right,
Do we have anything else or we're good?
I think we're good to go. Thank you.
Dr. Rotunda? Check
Thanks,
back
Liz.
with me. Yes, and we'll make sure that we're in good shape for today.
Okay, thanks everyone for attending. Our next session's in a week. If you haven't registered for it, the link is on our website in the calendar. And if you have, we'll see you next week.
Good to see all of you folks.